By the time people realized what was happening, it was already too late. 5 men had married her. 5 men had died. And every single time, it happened the same way. But the 6th man didn't die. He came back. And what he uncovered changed everything. If you love stories that feel real but leave you questioning everything, hit that subscribe button right now, because this one only gets darker from here. Who was she, really? Was she cursed, or something worse? Why did every man who loved her end up in the ground? And how did one man, just one, walk away alive? Some people called her a victim. Others called her a monster. The truth was somewhere no one expected to find it. Her name was Margaret. Margaret Louise Dawson. And if you passed her on the street in Knoxville, Tennessee, you would never think twice. She brought casseroles to sick neighbors, cried at church, and always remembered your birthday. She had soft brown eyes and a laugh that made a room feel warmer. She was the last person anyone would ever suspect. And that was exactly the problem. Margaret grew up with a mother who worked doubles at the diner and a father whose absence hurt more than his presence ever helped. She decided early she would never be left again. What she didn't understand yet was how tightly she would eventually hold on. Her first husband was Tommy Graves. 32, worked at the auto shop, called his mama every Sunday. Their first year together was everything she had wanted. Then Tommy got sick. Heart failure, the doctors said. He was 34. Margaret buried him in the rain and wept so hard the pastor held her arm. Everyone believed her. And maybe, back then, they were right to. 2 years later came Dennis Calloway, a football coach with a generous life insurance policy. 16 months after the wedding, Dennis was found unresponsive in the bedroom. No history of heart problems. The insurance paid out. Margaret bought a new car. Would you have suspected anything at this point? 2 husbands. 2 tragedies. People said she was unlucky. Nobody asked the harder question. Husband number 3 was Ray Hollis, a retired county clerk who told his sister 2 months before the wedding, "I know it sounds crazy, but she's the one." Ray lasted just over a year. His sister Carol drove 4 hours to the funeral and stood at the back with her arms crossed, watching Margaret receive condolences. Carol did not cry. She just watched. And she remembered every single detail. Before we go further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. By the time the 4th man died, people stopped calling it coincidence. Frank Merritt, healthy, 47 years old, was dead 11 months after the wedding. A few people whispered. But there was no evidence, no investigation. Just a death certificate and a grieving widow. The 5th man, Gerald Park, a retired military officer, had even been warned by a coworker, "People around that woman have a way of dying." Gerald laughed it off. He died in his sleep, 14 months after the wedding. Natural causes, the certificate said. He was 53. 5 men. 5 deaths. And then came the 6th. His name was Daniel Marsh. 58, a former county investigator, never married. He had spent decades watching people, reading rooms, noticing what others missed. When he met Margaret at a community dinner, something beneath her warmth didn't match the emotion on her face. He didn't run. He leaned in closer. He didn't fall in love with her. He studied her. Daniel quietly pulled public records, spoke to Carol, and traced a pattern hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades, insurance policies, timing, the same quiet endings. Then he did something no one expected. He proposed. Margaret said yes. Their October wedding was small, 30 guests, a garden venue. Daniel stood at that altar with his eyes open, knowing exactly what he believed she was, and choosing to stay anyway. Because he already had a plan. On their 6-month anniversary, Margaret prepared a special dinner. Candles, music, the good dishes. She poured Daniel a glass of wine and watched him drink it. She watched him grow still. Then she went to bed. She had done this before. She knew how it ended. Except this time, it didn't. Because Daniel had not drunk the wine. He had poured it into a sealed container in his jacket pocket, something he had done every night for 3 months. While Margaret slept, he made one phone call. By morning, forensic investigators were at the door. The substance in the wine matched compounds traced back to the deaths of 2 previous husbands. 3 bodies were exhumed. The evidence was damning. Margaret was arrested in her own kitchen, still in her robe, still waiting for news that Daniel was gone. She cried. She denied everything. She said the world had never been fair to her. Maybe some part of that was even true. But 5 men were dead. And her tears did not bring a single one of them back. Margaret Louise Dawson was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Carol Hollis sat in the front row the day the verdict was read. She didn't celebrate. She just closed her eyes, exhaled, and quietly said goodbye to her brother one final time. Daniel never remarried. He keeps a photograph of Gerald Park on his refrigerator, a man he never met, but whose death made the pattern impossible to ignore. When people ask why he walked into something so dangerous on purpose, he always gives the same answer. Because somebody had to. In the end, it wasn't death that followed her. It was something much harder to escape. The truth. Now tell me, when you think about those 5 men who had no idea what was coming, how does that make you feel? And if you were Daniel, knowing the risk, would you have stayed? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after they end.